Hello, thank you for joining us. My name is Charles County, and I'm here with my colleague.
Hello, my name is Andrew Miller, and I'm an assistant professor at the Lynch School of Education, focusing on educational leadership issues.
Today, we're here to discuss with you the Sustaining the Legacy 2020 Study of Urban Catholic Education that we have recently launched. And we're going to take you through a little bit about what the call is to this study, what we're doing with this study, and so we'll share some initial findings as well as we go. So thank you for being with us. If you have any questions throughout, please feel free to email us. You'll see our emails here on the first slide. And then you can see the website at the bottom of every slide where we have all the information on the study as well. So the legacy that we're talking about is this legacy within urban Catholic education. It's one that has a very strong foundation within the history and tradition of Catholic education within the United States. Here you see an image from, it's a rendering from 1727, well, actually 1725, when the Ursuline sisters first arrived in New Orleans, coming ashore right after the city has been founded. And just 2 years later, they opened the Ursuline School. This school from the start was a school that supported certainly wealthy white folks within the community, but also had a call to serving individuals who were slaves, individuals who had been and were indigenous peoples in this country. And they educated and sought to educate individuals that had been historically marginalized, individuals that were vulnerable, and individuals that were often excluded in society. You see here that rendering of their school shortly after it was open, and serving within these wonderful confines here in New Orleans. The school is our oldest Catholic, continually operating Catholic school in this country. And it is an all-girls, also the oldest all-girls Catholic school in this country. And you see to this day, they continue to really have as a hallmark their commitment to equity, to diversity, and to serving all individuals within their community. This call also carried forward to serving immigrant communities. Certainly, we've all heard about the number of Irish Catholics, Italian Catholics, and large Lithuanian and Polish Catholic communities that came to the United States throughout the 19th and early 20th century, who came and arrived and found support in their parishes, but even more importantly, within their parish school communities. This is a tradition of raising people and communities up through Catholic urban education within the United States. This is our legacy to Catholic education. It's one that very much is alive to this day. You see here a picture from the early 1970s, the first nativity school in the Lower East Side of Manhattan. The school was founded to serve individuals from Latino and Black communities that needed strong schooling, and really it was believed a strong faith background offered a hallmark to that educational tradition. This is also seen in the efforts begun in the early 1990s of the Cristo Rey Network. Here you see a picture from 1996, the year the first Cristo Rey school was founded in Chicago. Again, serving Latino communities, individuals that were and are consistently marginalized in our community, individuals that are vulnerable, individuals that are often excluded within our educational systems here in the United States. This is our legacy of Catholic education. We are called to serve on the margins, to partner with and walk with communities of excluded populations. And really, this is not only our history and our tradition, it's our legacy that we dream of carrying forward.
So, as Charlie laid out, we've talked about what the legacy is, where we've been, who we've served. It's now time to turn and get a little bit real about where we are now. Because as we all know, Catholic education has gone through massive shifts demographically and just in terms of the numbers of schools that exist over the course of the past 50 years. And even more so this past year during the pandemic, we have seen declines in total student enrollment. Right now, you can see that over the course of the past 50 years, this past year itself was the largest decline that we've seen in the contemporary era in Catholic education in terms of the number of students served. And so it makes us ask the question, we used to serve different populations. We continue to serve different populations, but not at the extent that we used to. What does this mean for where the legacy stands? Can we sustain the legacy if we are in a moment where we are not serving as many students as we used to serve over the course of the past 40, 50 years? And it makes us think, if this is our context, what does that mean for the future going forward? Another metric that will help us make sense of where we are right now. We can see that in terms of the schools, all Catholic schools in the country, just under 40% of all Catholic schools in the country are urban Catholic schools. So though it's not a majority of the Catholic schools in the country, it is definitely a plurality of the Catholic schools in the country, which means that significantly urban Catholic education is still a major factor in the Catholic education landscape in the US. Just under 40% of Catholic schools are categorized as urban schools given the NCEA data. But 52% of the closed and merged schools in the most recent NCEA data were urban schools. So yes, we have a plurality of Catholic schools being in the urban setting, but urban schools are closing at a higher rate. And so just like we have to confront the fact that we have declining student demographics, we've got to confront the fact that urban schools, urban Catholic schools are closing at a higher rate than non-urban schools. And then in terms of everything that Charlie has just established about one of the major pieces of the legacy of urban Catholic education is reaching out to students who have been pushed to the margins of society, whether ethnically, racially, or socioeconomically. Catholic schools in urban centers, in the geographic urban cores of our cities, have served those marginalized populations, students pushed at the margins racially, ethnically, socioeconomically. And yet we can see that these are the schools that are also closing. Schools that serve the racially, ethnically, and socioeconomically marginalized are not staying necessarily open at the same rates as students serving wealthier and whiter populations. And so we've got to confront the fact that our legacy is serving a certain type of population in a certain way in these urban centers that exist in our country. And we seem to be losing those schools. So we're confronting the reality that our legacy is something, but are we able to sustain it purely based off of demographics? And so we now turn to the fact that what we need to do is really figure out what's going on in our urban Catholic schools. Where are the pockets of success? Where are the things that we can say, this is what an effective urban Catholic school looks like, and here's how to sustain an effective urban Catholic school? Do we need to know more about the students, the staffing, and the structures of urban Catholic schools? Well, Charlie and I and the rest of our research team would argue yes. And so we've designed a study to answer this need, to say there is a legacy, there's empirical data, and there is research to show you what that legacy is. We're in a demographic moment where there's a lot of uncertainty about what the future will be. So can we take some time right now, before this uncertain future happens in any one direction or another, to dig deep and look at students, staffing, and structure to figure out what's going on in urban Catholic education in order to provide resources for a future that might look better than if we just looked at the demographic data that are in front of us.
So with that as our backdrop, that is our foundation, that is the picture of where we are. We've designed a study that is built on data gathering. We need that data, and we need an accurate picture of what's happening in this large sector of US Catholic education. So through that, gathering that data, we're really focused on gathering it from school leaders through both survey and NCA data, and then follow-up interviews, and from our superintendents. From our superintendents that work with and have the ability to have a broad understanding of what is happening within their urban Catholic schools that they work with directly. So the superintendents also have, through another online tool, free response questions that they can follow up with. And then we'll be doing targeted interviews with them after as well. After gathering that data, we'll conduct descriptive analysis And we should have early in 2022 available through NCAA publications an accurate picture of the demographics and the descriptives from this study. Further analysis will come in the form of academic papers and periodicals that you will see, as well as presentations at next year's NCAA conference and future NCAA conferences, as well as we continue to dig into urban Catholic education as a rich aspect of our tradition within U.S. Catholic schools, and hopefully a rich part of our future as well. Initially, we want to jump into some findings we found already. So though we've only just begun gathering data, we have some folks that have already been sending in the data to us, been helping us to gather all that. So we see, and we tried to split out some pieces that we thought might be interesting to all of you that are watching and joining us today. And hopefully also, to be very transparent, we'll encourage you to participate in the survey as well. Because again, these are just initial findings from a small group of schools that have already been submitting their data. Within that, we've decided to focus on the student body, leadership, finances, and some infrastructure aspects that individuals have been describing to us. So overall, we see that of the responding, so hopefully the slide doesn't confuse you in any way, but of those that responded, 43% of respondents saw an increase in overall enrollment in the last 5 years. 38% saw an increase in ethnic diversity within that enrollment, and 5% of respondents saw a decrease in ethnic diversity. 30% of respondents saw an increase in linguistic diversity of their student population, where 9% of respondents saw a decrease in their linguistic diversity. And a very different note, but also about the student body, we saw that 38% of respondents so far have seen an increase in students with special needs, individuals either on IEPs or individuals that have not yet been diagnosed, but have some clear needs within the school day that they are trying to seek to provide, with no respondents noting a decrease within individuals with special needs. So that is certainly an area where, as we all look at the future of urban Catholic education and the populations in which we're serving, have to be very attentive to thinking about, if these are the students that are coming through our doors in our urban Catholic schools, how are our schools adapting to best meet those individual and community needs and really support these students and their families. Andrew, did you have something you wanted to add there?
Yeah, I'll just say that we right now have great information in the aggregate about who attends Catholic schools. And we can compare that to aggregate data about who attends schools broadly. What we need to know, though, is if it is true that we hold true to these principles that Charlie established at the beginning of the presentation, that urban Catholic education is intended to find a way to build solidarity with those pushed at the margins, these initial findings seem to be encouraging. It seems to be that several of the schools who are responding to our survey so far have taken up that mantle and said, yes, we need to make sure that we are serving those who are ethnically, racially, or socioeconomically marginalized in society and have a specific place for them. But we need to make sure that we can diagnostically look at the field of urban Catholic education and say, who are we serving? And should we continue to serve that population? Do we need to serve a different population? Do we need to serve more of a certain population if we're going to live up to our principles? So these initial findings can help us say, can check our behaviors and check whether or not we're doing the right thing. And so it's important as we get more responses to say, is this going to bear itself out? Is this actually who we're serving, and are we serving them in the right way?
Moving on to our next category we identified within leadership. And again, these are school leaders that are themselves responding, and they're noting of all respondents we have so far, 62% have noted that they have some type of board. And of those 62%, 42% of those respondents reporting that are noting that they have advisory boards. So these are boards that don't necessarily have jurisdiction, but boards that are advising the school leadership on what they need to be doing to engage their students, impact learning, carry out a strong Catholic identity, and carry forward a strong Catholic education within this context.
In looking at this particular criterion that we're getting responses on, we can start to piece together what governance should look like in urban Catholic education by knowing what it does look like. There is this common sense notion about the need to pursue governance that is effective. Well, if we don't actually know what is, and in an aggregate way, what is across the different types of urban Catholic schools, who has an advisory board, what does that advisory board do, where are the boards with limited jurisdiction, and dig deeply into those data, it will be hard for us to say, here's what the future of governance and operations should look like for urban Catholic schools. So the more that we can start to see, oh, here's where advisory boards are and are not working, here's where boards of limited jurisdiction are and are not working, here's where a parish-based model is actually thriving, we can start to piece together a picture of no one single answer. It's not all about boards of limited jurisdiction. It's not all about advisory boards, but we'll be able to get a more nuanced picture for our urban Catholic schools about the kinds of leadership decisions, operational decisions that are working or not. And so it's one of the many types of leadership structure questions that we're asking in this survey to see how we can probe more deeply into the futures of urban Catholic education and to sustain that legacy on the leadership side of things.
Not included on this slide, but certainly want to note that our initial responses from superintendents have certainly noted that leadership and the leaders in the school building have an essential or bear an essential responsibility to the future and the sustainability of the school. They've also noted that finding working financial models. Schools aren't, and it's been noted by the superintendents already, that schools aren't getting what they were once able to gain from parishes or from their dioceses at different times. So as this is an aspect, finances are very important. Where are the dollars and cents coming? Schools that are completely tuition dependent will at times, as superintendents have noted to us, price students out of their school. And so that is a very real concern that we need to be thinking about. As we see when we look at finances, 27% of the school leaders that responded said they currently employ fundraisers. And of those, 15% had individuals that were 20 hours to 40 hours in the school building working on fundraising. So this is a growing number, certainly, and one that we have to pay attention to. But if we need to bring in more dollars and cents, and it isn't going to be on the backs of student tuition, the fundraising is essential. And I see certainly this growth in employing fundraisers as an essential component to that. Concurrently to this, we also see and note that approximately 30% of respondents noted that they had a balanced budget or a surplus in 16-17. And then that grew to 42% of respondents in 18-19 noting a balanced budget or surplus budget. And then in 2021, when many might think from an outside perspective in the context of COVID that we would experience something else, we see that 50% of respondents noted that they had a balanced budget or a budget surplus this fiscal year that we're currently in. So certainly that trend towards balancing budgets or having a budget surplus is something that schools are currently, urban Catholic schools are attentive to, and really trying to move the ball down the field, if you will, in trying to make sure they're sustaining a financial future that impacts that.
Catholic education comes as no surprise to any of you, given that it is private education in the U.S., unlike many of our global peers in Catholic education, with no federal or state provision of education. Even in places where there are private school choice policies, budgeting is a major thing that leaders have to deal with in individual Catholic schools or at the diocesan level, unlike several of our public school or even charter school colleagues who can push that decision-making somewhere else. The data that we collect in this Sustaining the Legacy study will show here's how urban Catholic schools are making financial decisions and making budget decisions. It might help us to better predict what the financial future will be, the more that we can say, given what we're seeing initially, given what we'll see when we have more responses. As private schools lacking federal and state provision of education, here's what we're going to have to say urban Catholic education needs to look like, given the numbers that we collect from you all. So financing is something that you all have to deal with. Budgeting is something you all have to deal with. As urban Catholic school leaders, we're hoping that we can shed some light about what that could look like or what that may look like in areas where there is more or less success.
Yeah. Another aspect that has been commentated on, and I think folks have probably seen it, and you've seen it in your school buildings, is within much of urban Catholic education, we have an aging infrastructure. Our school buildings are aging. So certainly within the respondents we have so far, we see that 69% of respondents are currently um, leading schools that are in school buildings built before 1980, and 100% are in 2000 or earlier. So now, as much as we thought even a few years ago that, oh, a school built in 2000 is cutting edge and brand new, now we're looking at it as that's still now 20 years old. So with an aging infrastructure, with finances being essential, how do we maintain that infrastructure? How do we improve the teaching and learning spaces in our school buildings? These are concerns that are very much on all of your minds, and concerns that with data, we'll know so much more about how you all are meeting these challenges. Superintendents have noted in their responses so far that attentiveness to improving infrastructure is an essential part of keeping vibrant, sustainable urban Catholic schools out there. How do we proceed in that way to acknowledge our infrastructure and then align and allocate resources that can meet those needs and advance Catholic education to truly being cutting edge within our current century?
We don't think we'll be able to tell you whether or not you should build a new building. What we need to help you figure out is whether or not there are places that are building new buildings or doing better maintenance on their buildings as is, or rethinking what they use for infrastructure, or doing the kinds of partnerships that are necessary in order to make infrastructure work for the kind of educational vision that's out there. So our initial data are showing the age of the building and processing what you can do with that age of the building going forward.
So with all that, and probably one of our chief goals of this conversation is to make to you an invitation. This is an invitation to be in dialogue with Andrew, with myself, with our research team about the future of urban Catholic education. And also, as you can see, as you saw on every slide and you see again here, please visit us at bc.edu/legacy2020 to engage and participate in this research. If you're a superintendent watching this, please email either myself or Andrew, and we will make sure that you get your appropriate questions that we would like to see answered by all superintendents as well. With that, Andrew, do you have closing thoughts for us?
I am so looking forward to hearing all the responses that you all give us on this survey. We are eager to delve deeper into the field here of urban Catholic education at Boston College in partnership with NCEA. Charlie and I are just so eager to talk to all of you to have these kinds of conversations. And so we look forward to it over the course of the next several months.
And as always, we would be remiss as partners of NCEA not to say enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you for your participation, and God bless.